Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel where I talk about movies. The movie I want to talk about today comes from 1963. This is Donovan's Reef. It stars John Wayne, Lee Marvin, Jack Warden, directed by John Ford. Before I start talking about the movie itself, I gotta mention how fantastic this movie looks on 4K UHD. It was just, I've seen this film literally a couple dozen times, probably more. But I've never seen it like this, and it's just eye-popping. The cinematography by William Clothier, the lighting, the colors. We're on a island in the South Pacific, and the lighting of that landscape and the ocean and the sky is just absolutely fantastic. But even the interiors here are great. And I also have to. This is a Kino Lorber release. It does, for those who are interested, it does come with the slipcase with the same art. And I also have to mention my connection to this film because it came out in '63. It was probably on television in '64. I never missed this movie when it was on TV. In fact, I would say that the movies that, and I was probably about 14 at the time, and I was beginning to really understand movies and how to approach them. But there were movies that just meant so much to me. I never missed. Donovan's Reef is one of them. And the other one is The Quiet Man. Donovan's Reef was probably on television more often, but they have a connection in a couple of ways. One is Frank Nugent wrote the screenplay for Donovan's Reef, also for The Quiet Man, and but it's also, and he also wrote screenplay for The Searchers. But the idea of the film, this idea of this sort of paradise kind of place, a South Sea island in Donovan's Reef, or the Ireland of the Quiet Man, which Ford photographs, like who would not want to live there in this great green landscape, and these very comical characters that Nugent and Ford thought up back in the 1950s. Here, this is The Quiet Man is a movie that still has a great reputation as one of Ford's best films. I think it's still beloved. Probably not Donovan's Reef. Donovan's Reef is more problematic. There's problems in The Quiet Man as well, but this is a much more problematic film. It's a comedy. It's a fantasy. We get the broad comedy, barroom brawls that Ford was famous for. I've always been up and down with Ford. I loved them back in the 1960s and into the 70s. I cooled on them, and I warmed up. I cooled on them. I'm warming up into them again in the latter part of my life. And I did a video of Ford's last film, which was Seven Women, and I was so taken by my reaction to it that I felt like I got to do some more Ford films. So Donovan's Reef, the story of Donovan's Reef is that during World War II, a ship was torpedoed by the Japanese. There were three survivors: John Wayne, Guns Donovan, Lee Marvin, who was Gil Hooley, and then there's a doctor. They were CPOs, and the doc was the naval officer. So they escaped, or they survived their shipwreck, and they hide out on this island, which is occupied by the Japanese. This is like 20 years earlier from when the film is set. And they became very friendly. The Islanders took care of them. There was a doctor. One of the characters, Jack Warden, plays the doctor, and he, he's very much needed in this very primitive village. And so Donovan, John Wayne character, and the doc, they stay on, and Wayne has this. Guns Donovan has this shipping. He's sort of like the local shipping magnate. There's a chain of islands, and he has boats, ships that transport goods back and forth. And then the doc also, he there's a real need for him, and he stays on, and he marries the hereditary princess. They have 3 children, but back in Boston, his wife who had died, um, they had a child, and that the doc had never seen. So, and this is played by Elizabeth Allen and Amelia, and she is sent by her family because the doc controls a good amount of stock, and they need that stock. They need to regain control of that stock. The family does, this rich Boston family. So they send Amelia out to in anticipation that if she goes to visit her father, he's going to be living, a decadent life, and there's a moral clause where the stock will then go back to the families. Well, the premises of this film is flimsy, but I don't know that it matters too much. But she's really, I think, wants to see her father. She's never seen her father. Her father's never come back. He was disliked by this Boston family that Amelia has grown up in. And then the flimsiest aspect of the film is that the doc is away upon her arrival, so Donovan and Gil Hooley, the Lee Marvin character, and they cook up this idea that the children belong to Donovan, because they don't know how she's going to react. They want the doc to give her the lowdown, and that she has these 3 siblings that are half native to this island. So it's pretty flimsy, and I'll get all the bad stuff out of the way first. And it's problematic in other ways because we have ethnic kind of stereotypes, racial, Japanese, Chinese. This is a community. Ford doesn't show us too much of the native community outside of the 3 kids, and that's important. And also there's the treatment of Amelia when she comes to the island. Ford thinks all this kind of stuff with women constantly falling to the ground and being treated rather roughly by John Wayne. He thinks this is kind of funny, and some of it indeed is. But there's one scene, and the famous scene that turns most people off of this movie. They don't want to see it again. Is Wayne spanking Amelia? They have developed some love-hate kind of relationship here, and then she submits, after the spanking. So, those are problematic. But there's another side to this, is that Amelia, as played by Elizabeth Allen, is a very strong person. She's one of the best female lead characters, I think, in all of Ford, and she's very, very appealing. And they do have some chemistry. Although John Wayne thought he was way too old, it was actually a 22-year difference, so that's also, I guess, would be problematic to people today. But fairly common in Hollywood in that era, where the older movie stars, the male stars, would get older, but they'd still have the same age as far as the women that they would be romantically involved with. And Wayne didn't really want to play the part, and didn't want to play with Elizabeth Allen in the part. Not that he had anything against her, but he didn't feel, he thought he was uncomfortable with it as much as audiences were today. Maybe they were in the 1960s as well. But it was a common practice among the male movie stars of the time. And then the other thing, as far as the racial stereotyping, ethnic stereotyping, we don't see much of the actual natives, except when there's events going on and we see them all, and they're just clothed in, like I say, this the colors here are just absolutely amazing, in the dresses that the women wear. But there's also this his Ford's reverence for ritualistic religion. He sees the value in the kids, and the older daughter is now the hereditary princess of the island. And there's so many great privilege moments, what Ford fans would call privilege moments in the film. From the very beginning, when Lee Marvin comes to the island, he's on a ship, but this is Pearl Harbor Day, and there's a tradition that he's there for Pearl Harbor Day to have a fight with Donovan. But it's just beautiful the way it films. Arrivals, Ford films arrivals and departures. Gilhooly's entrance into film is just, it's incredible. Lee Marvin is outstanding in this movie. If you're a fan, you have to see this. It's one of his great comic roles. Now, eventually he would win an Academy Award maybe 3 years later for Cat Ballou, where he plays a drunk, but that made him an A-list star. And the subsequent year, '67, I believe, was Point Blank, which Criterion is going to release in a couple months, and that's one of my favorite Lee Marvin performances, and very different from the kind of comedy that he's playing here. And Marvin was great at comedy. I mean, he is really hilarious in this movie. So these privileged moments include things like cutting down. They go up into the mountains of the island, and they're cutting down the Christmas tree. This can go in the category of Christmas movies, and Leilani, who's the oldest daughter, the hereditary princess, she prays to the gods, and Amelia says, "So you don't believe in you believe in a lot of gods?" And and Leilani says, "I believe in the one God, but I have respect for the beliefs and customs of my people." And it's a beautifully filmed scene, and I see the memorial that was erected for these three Americans, and the heroicness of the natives in shielding them before the war was over. Then we get this Christmas Eve pageant. This is one of the great scenes in John Ford movie. It's just amazing, especially the three wise men. Lee Marvin playing the King of the USA. Mike Mazursky is there. But the whole ritualistic, all set in this leaky roof of the chapel. This is just beautifully done. And then at the end, there's the Christmas Eve pageant, or the Christmas Day ceremonies, in which Leilani and Amelia finally understands the importance that Leilani has to this culture. And then there's the scene where Amelia meets her father, and again, Ford is just great with like reunions, and it's just so beautifully filmed. And it's all done in the visual element, the way Ford shoots people in almost like heroic poses. And again, Ford is very interested in the idea of the family, the shattering of the family, the reconciliation of the family, whether we can be a part of the family, whether it's even possible to be a part of the family. These are themes that run through Ford's films going back to the silent film days. So there's two commentaries here. One is by Joseph McBride. This is an A+ commentary. He wrote a BFI when he was still a teenager, or at least still in college. He wrote a short book on Ford with Michael Wellington for the BFI. Then he came to Hollywood, and in 1 week, he met Orson Welles, Jean Renoir, and John Ford. And he's in The Other Side of the Moon. Bogdanovich encouraged Welles to cast McBride as sort of a parody of himself, this young, film nerd. And then McBride wrote a terrific biography of Ford. And you can see him. There's a YouTube podcast, Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. He does a lot of interviews. He has a couple interviews with McBride. And he knows everything, and he understands. He doesn't particularly he understands why some Ford fans love the film, and I gotta admit, I still love the film. But he points out all the problems with it. And then there's another commentary with the biographer of Lee Marvin. This is a more anecdotal kind of commentary. It has some really good stories. So overall, it was a great for me. This was a great revisiting of a vision of what paradise might feel like, even though some of the events in here are not so much like we're in paradise, but you genuinely, from the cinematography and some of the, with the part of Leilani, I didn't write the actress's name. She did not have a big career. Elizabeth Allen did not have a significant career, and that's just amazing to me. But I just get so involved from the opening scene where Gilhooly comes back and they use the Hawaiian folk song that I think Pearl Ives actually had a record of this when I was a little kid, of this music. And I love the music. Some say it's a bit too sentimental, but it's a beautiful, this is, like I said in the beginning, this is a beautiful, absolutely gorgeous restoration. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen. I do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. Take care.